house I bought on the outskirts of Maplewood stood hidden in perpetual fog, surrounded by towering trees and far from neighbors. The realtor warned me about its sinister reputation, but I never believed in ghost stories. I moved there with my wife, Anna, hoping for a fresh start. The first few days passed quietly, until one morning Anna woke up, frightened. "Did you hear footsteps last night?" I hadn't heard anything, but reassured her that she was simply adjusting to new sounds. Yet within days, I began noticing unsettling things myself. Objects moved on their own, chairs out of place, belongings disappearing and reappearing in different rooms. At night, nightmares invaded my sleep. An invisible yet strangely familiar presence would watch me, whispering my name. Anna changed too. She became withdrawn and anxious, avoiding conversation. At night, she'd jump out of bed, staring blankly out the window, murmuring something unintelligible. I chalked it up to stress, until one terrifying night I saw something that chilled me to my bones. Anna stood motionless in the middle of the living room, her eyes wide open yet vacant, as if she was asleep with open eyes. "They're here," she whispered. "They've come for us." I touched her shoulder, and she snapped out of it, startled. "Did you say something?" I stayed silent, afraid to upset her further. The next day, I discovered an old diary hidden in the attic. It belonged to the man who had lived here before us. The pages were filled with desperate, frantic words. "They live in the mist. They come at night to steal your face and your memories. They won't stop until they've taken everyone." I dismissed it as madness. Soon afterward, however, I noticed something else. Each time the fog thickened, silhouettes began appearing around the house, faceless figures standing motionless, as if waiting. One night I awoke to strange sounds coming from the basement. I crept downstairs and froze in horror. Anna stood facing the wall, speaking into the darkness. "He's almost ready. Just a little more." "Anna," I whispered nervously. She slowly turned toward me. Her eyes were empty again. "Who are you?" she asked softly, looking straight at my face. Panicked, I switched on the light. The room was empty. Anna stared at me confusedly. "Why are we down here?" Something inside me broke. I knew something terrible was trying to take my wife, or maybe me. In desperation, I sought answers at the local library, uncovering that the house had a dark history. The previous owner had disappeared without a trace, his wife driven insane, claiming those who come in the mist took her husband. She was still institutionalized. I decided to visit her. Her first words upon seeing me were chilling. "They're close now. You're next." "Who are they?" I demanded. "The ones who want to become us. They steal your memories, then your face. First, you see them in the mist. Then you forget yourself. You're already forgetting things, aren't you?" A cold dread gripped me. It was true. I was forgetting dates, small details. Even Anna's face seemed strange. I returned home, finding it enveloped completely by dense fog, alive and swirling. The house looked abandoned. Inside, Anna waited for me, but it was no longer her. "They were waiting for you," she said, in a voice that was no longer Anna's. I recoiled as her face began shifting, twisting into something else. I turned toward the mirror and saw my own reflection changing too. "No, this can't be. It already happened," Anna whispered. "You've been here for so long. Don't you remember who you were?" Then it all came back. This wasn't my first time here. I'd already lost her once. Lost myself too. Memories flooded back. I was the man who disappeared a year ago. I was the man from the diary. And Anna had been gone for a very long time. I stared at the creature now, wearing Anna's face. It gazed back at me, smiling predatorily. "Welcome home." With my last strength, I ran to the door, opened it, but outside wasn't the street. It was Anna, the real Anna, eyes wide with fear. "Where have you been all this time? Why did you walk into the mist?" I turned around quickly. The house had vanished, replaced only by mist and hundreds of silent silhouettes slowly emerging, each wearing my face. Now I understood everything. I was the one who comes from the mist. I'd long ceased being myself. They smiled silently, stretching out their hands, inviting me. Anna shouted my name, but her voice faded into the fog. I stepped forward, knowing the truth at last. I'd never escape this place again. I missed the last bus again. Rain poured down, flooding empty streets as the city plunged into a cold autumn night. My only chance of not spending the night at the bus station was catching the suburban midnight bus from platform 13. I'd never even heard of this bus before, but the cashier sold me a ticket without question. When it finally arrived, I felt an unsettling sense of dread. The vehicle was old and worn, without a route number, its dull yellow headlights barely piercing through the fog. The driver didn't even look at me. He silently opened the door. Inside were just a few passengers. I took a seat behind a young woman, staring intently out the window. Soon the bus moved forward, slipping quietly into the thick mist beyond city limits. "This bus is always empty," she suddenly whispered without turning. "What did you say?" I asked, surprised. "No one boards the last bus," she repeated, slightly louder. "No one ever leaves." I didn't know what to reply, so I turned away, staring at the darkness outside. Soon the fog grew thicker, and the bus traveled a road I didn't recognize. No familiar buildings, only dark woods and empty fields. "It won't stop," the woman whispered again. Her voice trembled. "It's already too late." I noticed the other passengers looked strange too. They sat completely motionless, faces turned toward windows like mannequins. I suddenly realized no one had boarded or left the bus this entire time. "Where are we going?" I asked out loud, and immediately the bus lurched to a halt. The doors hissed open. Outside, there was only darkness and fog. "End of the line," the driver announced hoarsely. "Everyone must exit." No one moved. I slowly stood up and approached the driver. "But there's nothing here," I argued, trying to see his face hidden in the darkness. "Where are we?" "At the end of the road," he replied quietly. "It's time to get off." Suddenly, the woman in front of me turned her head, and I froze. Her face, that was gone, smooth and featureless, like a porcelain mask. "He'll stay with us too," she whispered softly. "It's almost done." Panicked, I rushed outside. The door slammed shut behind me, and the bus vanished instantly into the mist. I stood alone in the middle of an empty road, surrounded by darkness and silence. My phone had no signal. There was no way back visible through the fog. Ahead, a single dim street light illuminated an abandoned bus stop. Approaching cautiously, I saw a rusty, dirty sign. I rubbed off the grime to read, "Stop 13. Bus does not stop. Last ride, no return." My heart raced. Figures slowly emerged from the fog. Those same passengers, faceless and silent, approaching me slowly. "You're one of us now," whispered the woman, extending her hand. "The bus won't return." Terrified, I stumbled backward, running blindly into the fog. But no matter where I ran, I always returned to stop number 13, surrounded by the faceless figures. And then I saw my reflection in the wet glass of the bus shelter. I had no face. "You won't leave now," said a voice from the mist. "You took the last bus." And then I understood. I'd never go home again. I'd become part of this final journey. And here I remained forever, waiting for the next passenger. I was driving down the highway late one evening when a thick fog rolled in. It seemed to come out of nowhere. Everything went dark, and the trucks and occasional cars vanished from sight. After a few more miles, I saw the dim glow of a sign that read gas station. I had no choice. My fuel gauge was nearly empty, and visibility was getting worse by the second. I turned off toward the station, which was engulfed in an especially dense fog, as though it existed in some pocket of reality. Inside, the place was old-fashioned but clean. A flickering neon open sign hung in the window. I stepped out of my car and took a look around. The pumps were plastered with peeling advertisements, and the ground was cracked. It seemed like no one had fueled up there in a decade. Yet the light above the register was on, and behind the counter stood a man in a creased attendant's uniform. Or rather, he was slumped against the counter, barely moving, as if lost in deep thought. "Good evening," I said, clearing my throat to get his attention. He jerked his head up sharply, as though not expecting a regular human being. Perhaps something else entirely. "The fog, huh?" he said slowly, studying my face. "It's been happening more often these days." I nodded, doing my best not to sound annoyed. I was tired, couldn't see the road, and just wanted to fill up the tank and get moving. I'd like a full tank. "And is there anywhere to get some coffee around here?" "Coffee's over there behind the counter," he replied, pointing to a faded machine. "I'll take care of the gas." He paused, then added, "Just watch yourself. This fog isn't what it pretends to be." That was strange. I wanted to ask more, but the attendant had already gone outside. I took off my jacket and walked over to the coffee machine. The coffee was bitter and scorching hot, as though brewed too recently, or perhaps not recently at all. Through the window, I could see him slowly filling my tank. The fog seemed almost alive, curling along the ground in twisting plumes. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing in the haze, watching us, a tall and indistinct figure. I set my coffee down and looked more closely. Nothing. Just nerves, I told myself. When I returned to the counter, the attendant was waiting with my receipt. I handed him some bills, careful not to meet his gaze. Suddenly, he asked, "You ever been here before?" "First time," I said, eager to leave. "Then don't turn right at the fork up ahead," he said softly. "That way's a dead end." I nodded and opened the door, but his final whisper stopped me. "If you see people out there in the fog, don't go near them. They're not people." Nonsense, I thought, sighing as I headed for the exit. I got in my car and placed my coffee in the cup holder. The fog had lifted slightly, letting me see the old, rusted highway sign. The fog isn't what it pretends to be. Ridiculous. I pulled back onto the road, continuing along the highway. Sure enough, after a while I spotted a sign. Right 10 miles, left 30 miles. Remembering the attendant's warning, I went left, toward what I recognized. My plan was to find the main freeway and then a motel, but after 5 minutes, the road seemed to loop in on itself. The fog got even denser, and the lane markings disappeared. My headlights illuminated nothing but thick white haze. That's when I noticed someone on the shoulder, waving as though in distress. "Don't go near them," I recalled the attendant's words. My heart pounded, but how could I leave someone potentially in danger? I turned on my hazard lights and slowed down. It was a girl in soaked clothes, her hair plastered to her face. "Help, please," she whispered, stepping toward my window. "I'm lost." Something about her voice sounded off, but I rolled down the window anyway. She climbed into the passenger seat, trembling all over. "Thank you," she whispered. I stepped out of my car, and the fog. "Where are you from?" I began to answer, but noticed her eyes were staring straight ahead, never blinking, as if she couldn't see me. Her hands gripped the seatbelt, knuckles white. "We'll find a way out," I said, steering back onto the road. There's got to be a gas station close by. A gas station, she repeated. There isn't one here. I fell silent. Something was clearly wrong. The scenery outside seemed to repeat itself. A sign for 10 miles. I was sure I'd already traveled farther than that. Why were we still in the same place? Suddenly, several figures appeared in the fog, blocking the road. They stood motionless, their faces indistinct. I slammed on the brakes, and the girl let out a shriek. What are they? She shrank back in her seat, while a profound terror took hold of me. The shapes moved closer silently, gliding along the pavement, radiating a numbing cold. Go, she cried. I pressed the accelerator to the floor. The car nearly hit one of them, something scraping against the side. I raced on blindly, unsure where I was headed. Then the road ended, and I veered off to the shoulder, spinning out. We narrowly avoided a tree. When I caught my breath, I realized the girl beside me no longer looked afraid. In fact, her expression was unnervingly calm, her eyes glinting in the darkness. You're in the fog, she said softly in a nearly metallic voice. There's no running from it. My throat went dry. I tried to stay composed as I fired up the engine again and pulled back onto the road. But I knew we were going in circles. There were no landmarks. Everything had dissolved into the gray mist. Where are we even going? I asked. Home, she replied, smiling. To him. To who? She didn't answer, only kept on smiling. Then I remembered the attendant's warning. If you see people in the fog, don't get near them. They're not people. Fear clutched at my heart. I had done the exact opposite. The fog thickened, revealing more ghostly silhouettes closing in from all sides. The road itself seemed to vanish, and my headlights dimmed as if something was draining their light. Suddenly, a shape emerged from the haze, the same gas station, but I had left it behind me. With no other option, I steered straight for it, pulled up to the pumps, and braked hard. It's time, the girl whispered. I looked at her. Her features were no longer human. Her face was beginning to fade away entirely. I jumped out and ran to the door, banging on it. No one responded. Then the attendant appeared behind me, grabbed me by the arm, and pulled me in, locking the door. Why'd you pick her up? He rasped, eyes blazing. I told you to keep away from them. White, faceless shapes hovered near the window. The girl from my car was among them, fully merged with the fog. They stared at us, no eyes, no emotion. Yet I felt their presence pressing down on my mind. Who are they? I managed to ask. What do they want? They come from somewhere else, the attendant said, meeting my gaze. They feed on memories and fear. The fog is their doorway in. Anyone who picks them up never leaves. He led me into a back room. A map lay on the table, covered in odd markings. One route was labeled as some sort of loop. The fog forces the highway to curve back on itself, he explained. It's the same turns over and over, bringing you right back. They lure people by pretending to need help at the roadside. Then they take them. I whispered. He nodded, and I felt an icy dread course through me. Is there any way out? Sometimes, he said quietly, but only if none of them has truly joined you. See that? He pointed out the window at half a dozen figures. They're neither living nor dead trapped, and they want to drag us into that fate. We knew we had to act before they broke in. The attendant held out a set of keys to an old pickup. Let's go. Just don't look at them. We sped off the station's lot. Figures appeared on the road, but we didn't slow. It felt as though the very air were turning solid. I had no idea where he was taking me, but I trusted he had a plan. Gradually, the fog began to thin, revealing the familiar glow of the highway's lights. We shot out onto a normal stretch of road, with other cars in the distance. Behind us lay only the gray pall of fog and the faint outline of that station. "They can't cross the boundary," the attendant said, noticing my look of amazement. "They're limited to that place. Once you escape, hopefully you'll never go back." I opened my mouth to thank him, then saw something horrifying. His right arm was dissolving into strands of fog. What's happening to you?" "I'm already part of them," he whispered with a desperate sadness in his eyes. "I've been at that station too long. But you go live your life. Just remember, never pull over for anyone in the fog." And with that, his image blurred, melting away. I reached out for the steering wheel, but it was gone. The pickup vanished, and I found myself standing on the shoulder of a normal highway under silent night skies. Through the faint haze behind me, I thought I glimpsed someone watching. Maybe that girl, or the attendant, or a whole crowd of faceless figures. I turned and ran toward the glow of traffic, vowing to myself, never again would I stop at an old gas station in the fog.